that poses a significant danger to the child. And the method that Gigi unfortunately was put in seclusion with was a danger to that child. Should not have been used. And the second thing is establishes safety standards for seclusion. Unfortunately, sometimes when children are secluded, they're not placed in a safe room that has been prepared for seclusion, or they're not monitored. And across the nation, unfortunately, we've had a number of children in those situations which have been hurt. There's a liability issue for our school districts, but most importantly, the safety of children, and often special needs children, is really at risk. So I bring this bill to you here today, really thinking about Gigi and trying to, without stepping on the guidelines that have been worked on and formed with many stakeholders, to also codify the areas that are not addressed and to push it forward. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer your questions. And I know I've got several parents who traveled here today to speak to this.
Thank you. Let me just say, by way of background, this is not over on seclusion and restraint. 4 years. We passed legislation in 2015 after hearing horror stories from both parents and students who have been infected. It's a shame. And as this thing has moved agonizingly slow through the regulatory process, unfortunately, this continues. It's still happening, which is unbelievable to me this day and time. So I'm not trying to do harm to your bill. Anything that strengthens it, that makes it even more effective, that protects these children, I'm all for it. The thing is, the department didn't approach me. They didn't talk to me about it. Not that I guess they don't have to, but I would have appreciated it since we've done 4 years worth of work here and have watched this thing move through the regulatory process, and now we're close to having those regulations in place, which is that may not even stop this ugliness that's going on, but it will make a big impact on it. So that's where I am. I just want you to know that this has not been a road easily traveled. And some of the testimony we heard 4 years ago when we put this in place was painful, and it's those families, some of those families are scarred for life because of the experience they had. So this is something that has to be dealt with. If somebody from the department could tell me just how these two go together, that's what I'm looking for.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if we have anybody from the department here, but if I could say real quick first, I applaud the work you've done in this, and I agree with you. This is it's a tough subject. I mean, frankly, I debate about all the different things that brings us here to serve, and frankly, standing up for children who don't have a voice. I think this is one of those things that brings us all here. These changes that I brought in this amendment, I'll ask DOE to speak on this, but I did work with DOE, and these changes were ones we developed together that would not go against the guidelines that are still out for public comment right now, which I think pushes this ball forward significantly. But the two simple things that I've done in cooperation with them, again, make sure that we don't step on those guidelines, but it codifies things now so we can take a step forward immediately. With that, Mr. Chairman.
As long as there is nothing that delays the process, because we have been delayed for 4 years. Longer than that, really. I think Delegate Hope first introduced legislation 5 years ago. And so it's been a long time. I mean, to my way of thinking, too long, but I'm not a patient man. So I know the process takes time. I just want to be sure, and with all due respect to your bill, because I don't have a problem with what the bill says. I just don't want it in any way to impact my bill and my work in terms of further delays.
I can assure you that is not my intention at all, because I want those guidelines yesterday, just like you do.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Pat Hames from the Department of Education. We've worked with the delegate to attempt to do exactly what you said, to conform and add some additional language to the bill that would not require us to start over again. And that was some fear we had. I think the delegate understands that the basis of what he was concerned about is in the proposed regulations, and I think this is a way to keep the ball moving forward.
Thank you. Any questions for Peggy? Anyone else wish to speak to the bill?
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the chairman and to the members of the committee for listening to the proposals of the bill today and for allowing us to speak, and for the work that they've done previously themselves looking at other legislation passed regarding restraint and seclusion. My name is Zoe Reed. I'm a mother of 2 children with autism and also the friend of the mother of Gigi, the child who was in the Washington Post. My road here with Don Bell started in February 2018 when Gigi's mother Alexa called me to say she had been asked to the home of a parent who had a picture of her daughter on her iPad, who had been penned in like an animal in an unsafe environment over what she believed was a number of hours and hadn't been informed what had happened to her. At that point she told me she was going to go to the media, and she realised that her daughter would then become the face for restraint and seclusion around the world. When you look up restraint and seclusion on Google internationally, Gigi's picture comes up in the first 3 pages. That means our state is looked at and what happened to her internationally. I ask the lawmakers here, please, to consider passing HB 2599, which will put in place safeguards and will prohibit the use and any method of restraint and seclusion that would harm a child. Restraints such as prone and supine, which have been discussed by people and stakeholders on these committees in the past years, and the things which pose a significant danger to them. As Mr. Bell has said, these children have no voice. You're elected and have done a wonderful job in moving the process far as you have. I also have testimony from Gigi's mother that I will give to you individually and email to you, and I believe she emailed to you as well. We just have a responsibility for these children who are being locked in cupboards, who are suffering from PTSD, to move this forward as quickly as we can and put in place legislation so that they no longer can be harmed anymore, whether that be physically, emotionally, and again the fiscal impact that this will have against school boards, as children possibly die and have done throughout the country in the past 5 years. I thank you for listening to me and my testimony.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak today, and I wanted to let you all know that I truly appreciate all the work you've done thus far with the regulations. But I'm here today as a parent. My name is Jennifer Vernon. I'm a parent of 5 children. 2 of those kids have IEPs and receive special education services. I would like to ask you if you would like to find out from your school or your child that your child had been secluded every day for 6 months without your knowledge. Or to find out, to believe that your school had led your child to believe they were a bad kid, and that's where they belonged. That's what happened to my child. Sorry. My son no longer carries the bruises from trying to break out of those rooms, but he bears, emotional and psychological scars. He has trauma, symptoms of PTSD, increased anxiety, and fears that he never had before. None of the incidents that involved my child were done because he was in imminent danger. They were done because he was annoying, and the school didn't want to deal with him. If I had known the extent that this was happening to my child, I could have done something before he was damaged. This bill will not only require, as it in its current state, the regulations, which is wonderful, but adding the additional safeguards for seclusion as well as restraint, to prohibit the use of any method of restraint or seclusion that it determines poses a significant danger to the student, and to establish safety standards for seclusion could prevent this from happening to another child. And I was gonna read a letter from my son, but I can't. But I will make sure you get a copy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to it?
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Amy Willard with the Legal Aid Justice Center. I stand in support of the bill. I'm just seeing the substitute now. I actually came in support of many pieces of the original legislation. And I thank the chairman for his work. I thank the General Assembly for their work, and the department and the board for bringing the regs as far as they've come. I just want to make sure in this language, prohibit the use of any method of restraint or seclusion that it determines poses a significant danger to the student. I truly hope the board looks at that and reads it as we need to have an explicit ban on prone restraints. That is what the U.S. Department of Education's 15 principles say. It's very explicit about that. It's my understanding right now that the draft of the regs that has come back down to the board does not contain an explicit ban on prone restraints. That is a concern of ours. From the prior legislation, it seems it's a concern of the delegates as well. And so I just stand to say I really hope the board takes this legislation, if you all pass it on, and takes the message from that they need to insert that explicit ban in the regs.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, Nicole Brenner with Reed Smith on behalf of Grafton. Grafton operates private day schools, group homes, and a psychiatric residential treatment facility in Virginia. They have a division called UGRU that has a physical alternative to restraint. We practice that method in our facilities. It was developed over the last 15 years after a very high incidence of restraints and seclusions in our facilities. It's now used in 23 states and by over 130 provider organizations nationwide. It was recently studied, and the publication of that study found a 98.4% reduction in restraints. Came here again, like Amy, to speak in support of the prone restraint aspect of the original bill. Prone restraint is outlawed in 27 states and in 33 states for children with disabilities. Speaking still in support of the bill, but hope that moving forward, and I've had many conversations with Delegate Bell and with Zoe on this topic, that prone restraint is something that we're talking about when we're talking about safety moving forward. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello again, my name is Heidi Longkua. Thank you, Chairman and delegates, for your time. I would like to say that the GAO is a good report if you haven't viewed it. In 2009, where it reported if you have no knowledge of restraint or seclusion, that something that really spoke volumes was a 4-year-old died while about a 250-pound man, a young lady, died being prone restraint. So we do in Loudoun, as far as Loudoun County Public Schools, we have had your hero out there, and that's not, it's different from MANT. MANT does promote prone restraint, and the hero does not. So I just would like if you could disseminate that to your separate school districts as well. And where we are in Virginia regarding restraint and seclusion policies is the majority of our schools do not have them. They have not adopted them. But if they have, you can find them on board docs in section J, where it's the same copy and paste policy over and over, where it says a school district has 15 days to report. Now, 15 days could mean tragedy as well if a child has incurred a brain bleed or a concussion or a broken bone. So I just want to reiterate the importance of a policy. I mean,
Anyone else wish to speak to the bill? Let me share an email that I received this afternoon from Dr. Michael Asap, who is Council of Administrators of Special Education, VCASE. He says that VCASE opposes House Bill 2599, even in its amended form. He's attached a side-by-side comparison. He says that, according to research, there's no need for any additional law this time regarding sufficient restraint. Current proposed regulations took over 4 years of inclusive discussion from all stakeholders, including parent advocates. Let's let the regs roll out, implement, and fix as we see needed in the future. What it's worth.
May I
Yes,
say
ma'am.
something? Angela Neely with VCASE and
Yes.
Culpeper County Public Schools. I think the email from Dr. Asap was from earlier in the day, before the latest change that was made by Delegate Bell. I think the changes that Delegate Bell has made to the bill, VCASE is in support of at this point. We're
Okay.
comfortable with
Well,
that.
thanks for clarifying that, because he says, even in its amended form.
I think that was some conversation earlier in the day, I believe. I have been in conversation with him as well. What time did you receive that from him?
Mr. Chairman.
1218.
Okay, yes, I think that was earlier today. We are in support of the latest language revision.
Mr. Chairman, I do believe we've addressed all of his concerns, because the analysis where you get a side-by-side, all of those have been taken out, and then the amended bill does not apply to that anymore.
All right. Anyone else wish to speak to the bill? Chair will entertain a motion. Second. Moved and properly seconded to report the bill. Any further discussion? Please cast your vote. That motion carried, 8-0.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you and the committee, especially for all your work on this. Thank you very much.
Where are the bills, right?
One more.
One more.
I have a. Chairman Cole has the review, House Bill 2319.
Mel, if you'll explain your bill.
House Bill 2319. Prohibits school boards from levying fees and charges on students, with the exception of charging tuition under certain circumstances. Bill was brought to me by constituents in the 20th district. They feel like they're being burdened by any number of fees. They feel like that their education should be free and appropriate, as their children are sometimes denied opportunities because they can't pay the fee. Those fees mean that some students are not able to participate in an activity because they don't have the money to do it. I don't think that's what our Constitution says. It says that they should all be entitled to a free and appropriate education. It does not say only those who can afford it should be able to participate in special activities. And that's the reason for the bill, that's the purpose of the bill, to try to relieve the burden on some of our taxpayers.
I have a question just real quickly. Does that include, would your bill prohibit fees for extracurricular activities?
If those fees are charged through the school, and if they're necessary for a student to participate, it would. It does not preclude fundraising by booster groups or parent groups or anything like that. But a direct fee to a student or a family would be excused.
Okay. Do any other members of the committee have any questions for the paper? All right, would anybody in the audience like to speak either for or against the bill?
Chairman Ron Jordan, representing Loudon Public Schools. One of our major concerns with this is parking fees. Parking is a user fee. Kids who drive to school have to pay a fee for the decals, and then the school division uses the money to monitor, police, and maintain the parking lots. In Loudon, that's a significant number with 83,000 students, as you can imagine. A high percentage of the high schoolers driving to school. This would prohibit us from charging that fee.
I have a question for you. Do you have a provision where the fee may be reduced or waived for those who are on free and reduced lunch?
There is a
program?
provision where students who are disadvantaged can apply for a waiver. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Stacey Haney from Virginia School Board Association. We also oppose the legislation. Frankly, we would love to be able to provide all of the extra activities that we provide free of charge and more. We'd love to be in a position to do that, but frankly, we're not in a position to do that. And so these fees are what enable us to provide some of the above and beyond. And I'll also point out, Mr. Chairman, we're very limited in the fees that we're permitted to charge. There are fees that are set out in the statute, and there are fees that are set out by the Board of Education, and that's it. We're not allowed to charge any fees other than that. So it's been thoroughly vetted by both the General Assembly and the Board of Education as to what fees we can charge. And I'll point out that one of the fees that gets eliminated and that we couldn't charge for is when textbooks are lost or damaged. So of course we provide textbooks free to students, but if they lose them or damage them, particularly if they do so intentionally, currently we're permitted to charge a fee, and that may be one of the few things that encourages students not to damage their textbooks. And that extends also to electronic devices. Many of our school divisions have been able to move to a model where we provide electronic devices to our students. If you take away the ability for us to charge a fee in the event that the student intentionally damages the device, we're going to be hard pressed to provide those devices, and so we would ask that you oppose legislation.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Laws, the policy chair for the Virginia Coalition for Arts Education, which counts as its constituents over 6,000 arts educators from across Virginia. Despite what appears to be a positive intent, we have great concerns about the unintended consequences of HB 2319 and strongly oppose its passage. The VCFAE understands the concerns surrounding the imposition of fees and would urge school boards to ensure that student economic status does not determine access to the full range of instructional programs and activities. However, the elimination of virtually all fees and charges would have a significant negative effect on instructional programs and related co-curricular or extracurricular activities and programs, and place an additional fiscal burden on school divisions. Examples of current fees and charges which would be disallowed include art fees, which fund middle school, high school consumable materials or a portion of them in many districts, student-selected extracurricular activities, class dues, field trips that are not required instructional activities, special enrichment programs, musical fees and rental, and overdue, lost, or damaged library and textbooks. HB 2319 also threatened, let me move on to another. Further, VCFAE is concerned that the impact of 2319 will have a disproportionate impact on the fine arts, where specialized equipment and consumable materials are integral parts of instruction, leaving dance, music, theater, and visual arts and other elective programs struggling to meet their standards of learning expectations. With the eliminations of fees, the fiscal responsibility for fine arts instructional materials and equipment will be placed solely on local school boards who may not be able to fulfill the funding gap. For these reasons and more, we oppose the bill. And I have our position statement.
So it's late, so please be
I'll
as
be
brief as you
Mr.
can.
Chairman, Tom Smith, Superintendent's Association. We are against the bill. Fees do play an important role in what we can do. To answer the chairman's question, the school systems I'm familiar with do try to look at the economic status of a family when assessing these fees. That's the only fair thing to do, and I don't know of one that doesn't do that. Fees really became an important part of what we're doing through the recession, when more and more monies were reduced from the state, and we had to look at how we were going to continue with these extracurricular activities. So we're in opposition to the bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Michael Malloy, Fairfax County Schools, particularly in the absence of replacement funding for some of these programs, we would have very significant concerns, sharing some of those that my colleagues mentioned. In terms of our technology program, we have a one-to-one program that's rolling out technology. There are some maintenance fees or loss and damage fees that may be attached to that. And we do have provisions in most of our fees that deal with free and reduced lunch, either reducing or waiving fees for them. So for those reasons, we oppose the bill.
Mr. Chairman, members of subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm representing the Virginia Association of Adult and Continuing Ed. We are opposed to the bill. We do have programs that charge already for classes. Many places charge for the ESL classes, and also a program called NEDP, which is not the GED program, which many divisions provide. But the National Educational Development Program is more like a true high school program where people come in the evening to take math, English, etc. So this would definitely impact those programs. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Jeremy Bennett, Vaco. For the reasons stated, we oppose the bill.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, representing middle and high school principals, and we would also point out that we don't collect fees to make a profit or for any special pet projects, but we collect the fees so student services can continue and maybe be instituted. As you heard, I don't know if you've heard this, anybody said this or not, but driver's ed would also be affected. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm John Suswick with Virginia Professional Educators. We think the intent of the bill is noble. We thank Delegate Bell for his interest in helping low-income students qualify for extracurricular activities. Our main concern is that in many cases, if you take, for instance, music educators, over the weekend I was contacted by a number of music teachers, and these teachers teach in various programs such as chorus, band, other programs, and they have to charge fees for music, for band instrument rental, for uniform rental, for field trips. And if these fees were eliminated, then the school would have to pick up the slack. They would have to pay for all of that. And in many places in Southside Virginia and Southwest Virginia, the schools just don't have the money, and it would result in the elimination or it might result in the elimination of chorus and band. So those are our concerns. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kathy Berkshire with the Virginia Education Association. For all the reasons stated, we oppose the bill.
Mary Wagner, Fairfax Arts Coalition for Education. I have two questions for you. The first one is, how would you expect the school systems to pay for all the activity fees that we needed to collect? And my second question is, when you go to a marching band, when you go to a football game in the fall and you see the band without the low brass instruments, because those are instruments that the kids don't have to pay for, they pay just a fee to rent those instruments. Those instruments aren't going to be there any longer. So please think hard when you think about this, because I have, in 39 years of teaching, I never once saw a student that was indigent not given what he was needed in my school system. Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Chairman. All right, Mr. Chairman, final word.
First of all, I'm going to refute one of the statements I heard. Economic status does influence participation where I live. I get a lot of emails over the weekend, and almost all of them came from Northern Virginia. Northern Virginia resources are a lot different than 20th District resources. And folks up there can generally afford fees, so it's not a big deal to them. But my constituents, their participation is influenced a lot of times. And I heard someone rattle off all the fees that there are that are charged. That's a lot of stuff. We give free and reduced lunches and breakfast. We give free textbooks. We found a way to do that. We found a way to pay for that. I just don't think we should ever have a situation where a child is denied participation because the family can't afford to pay the fee. Let me just read to you from Article 8, Section schools of high quality to be maintained. The General Assembly shall provide for a system of free public elementary and secondary schools for all children of school age throughout the Commonwealth, and shall seek to ensure that an educational program of high quality is established and continually maintained. And I don't see anything about charging fees to do it. So,
Members of the committee have any questions or comments? Is there a motion? Hearing none, I'll turn the gavel back over to the chairman.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes our business for the subcommittee. Let me thank all of you for due diligence, for hard work, and for being here for 3.5 hours today. Appreciate it. Thank you. Good work. We're adjourned.